So I've never met a coach who wouldn't agree that the mental game, what goes on between an athlete's ears, is the greatest inhibitor to an athlete reaching their full potential. And yet I've met very few coaches who feel confident in being able to help assist their athletes in closing the mental gap or overcoming those mental hurdles. Today's guest is going to share some simple, easy, practical ways to help our athletes in their mental performance. Lisa Mitzel is a prominent mental training and mental health coach. She's the author of 2 books and the founder and president of Zen Tiger Mind, which produces equipment and merchandise for mental training and athlete wellness. She's the creator of the Mental Power Station. She's an international speaker and clinician, former head women's gymnastics coach at Stanford University, an elite gymnast, NCAA national champion, 6-time All-American, member of 4 NCAA national championship teams at the University of Utah, and a Hall of Fame inductee. And I know you'll find a lot of value in our conversation today. Welcome to the Coaching Culture Podcast. I'm your host, JP Nurbin, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Nate Sanderson. The mission of this podcast is to help you become a better leader and build a better culture. In addition to this podcast, I'm the founder of TOC, which provides one-on-one coaching and consulting for leaders. Learn more about us at tocculture.com. This episode is brought to you by the TOC newsletter. Every Thursday, our newsletter includes 2 things you don't want to miss out on. Firstly, the notes to that week's podcast episode. Whether you're listening while driving the car, out for a run, or doing the dishes, we don't want you to miss the biggest takeaways from each episode. Secondly, each newsletter is a short article from myself or Nate on leadership and culture. These articles are designed to inspire, encourage, and provide practical insights into leadership and culture building. Our content is a perfect fit for anyone who wants to stay up to date with the latest trends and insights in culture building. You can subscribe to the newsletter at tocculture.com or by clicking on the link in the details of each episode. So Lisa, we are excited to have you on the podcast today. It's been quite a long time coming. I remember first hearing about you a few months ago, and I've been pouring through podcasts and some of your information and your books, just kind of soaking up so much really good content that you have around the mental aspect of mental health, safe sport, and gymnastics and all sports. So we're going to have a great conversation today. I want to get started with just kind of giving your experience in sports and just giving you an opportunity to share that with our listeners here so they can understand how your experience in sports have shaped and kind of led you into your work today. And so I'll just kind of leave it there for you. If you could just kind of give us an overview of, how you got into gymnastics and then how that's led you to the mental training and performance aspect of your work.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I guess I was born wanting to go upside down, so that was just innate. But then I also, at a young age, I was in a big family, and ultimately I have 4 brothers and 2 sisters. But as a young kid, there were 5 of us. And I think, sports was just part of our family activity. I ran around with the boys. I was in a tree. I was in the river. We were catching fish by hand. I was playing kickball in the street. I played football with the boys. So that just kind of led to, I was nurtured, let's say. I was nurtured. And then was 1972 when I saw the Olympics, and like many young girls at that time, watched Olga Korbut, and my parents, they found out about a local, like a Parks and Recreation program, and they signed me up because I was flipping on the furniture. So that's what got me into gymnastics. What got me into coaching gymnastics, and then after that, being a mental training and mental health coach, is I was at the University of Utah, and I'd learned so much about kind of creating a championship mindset. And it was very different at the university level than when I was a club gymnast. And in club gymnastics, I learned how to train very, very hard. And I was training like 30 hours a week. And then in college, it was more of a whole kind of whole person strategy, whole team culture strategy, whole community connection. We did an opening for a restaurant. You know, we signed autographs. There was like connection with the community. And so when I got out of gymnastics, somebody offered me a coaching job, and I felt like I had something to contribute. So I think when you feel that maybe you have some kind of a purpose to lead young girls to work hard, to have certain values and philosophies about themselves, about a team, about family and community, right? And um, and so I felt compelled to want to coach and develop these young people. And then it was more than 10 years ago, I was asked, well, I was coaching at a gym, and I asked the owner if I could do some clinics in an extra room that they had. And I was already starting to teach athletes mental skills. And that happened because when I was 15, I worked with a sports psychologist, and that really changed my life. And then also at the University of Utah, we worked very closely with a sports psychologist. And again, huge impact. Both of those gentlemen, Dr. Ken Ravizza at Cal State Fullerton, and then Dr. Keith Henshin at the University of Utah, they infused me with this idea that if I just pause, take a breath, and use the mental skills, that how I use my mind is actually going to direct me towards the success that I want. Yeah.
Lisa, I wonder if you could give us from an athlete's perspective what that first moment was like when you tried that mental skill for the first time and found it to work. Because I think sometimes our coaches are maybe tentative to start tiptoeing into that water, not sure how it's going to be received as an athlete. But what was it like for you the first time that you felt like, wow, there's something to this?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it was a little bit of a learning curve, because you guys understand athletes, and all of us were, and I conclude myself in that group. We want to be productive, we want to move. It's all about action, action. So when I had this accident in gymnastics, I was tumbling, and I went up in the air for a couple flips. It was a double back, and it was sort of like Simone Biles in the Olympics. I got the twisties. I got lost in the air, and I crashed. And so it was a bad crash. I was knocked unconscious, and I had a big lump on my head. And so that's what initially took me to the sports psychologist, as I started to become afraid of my skills. And after a month, I had lost like 70% of my skills. It was like an amnesia. And so I had a reason to sit there in this sports psychologist's office at Cal State Fullerton, um, because I was going to quit if I couldn't get better. So there was a reason to do it. And yet it was very difficult to sit there, and he was very low key. He was like, "Hey, Lisa, how you doing?" Let's. And then he'd have these big brown eyes, and he would just be like, "Well, you can tell me, when were you afraid? When does it start?" And I'm thinking, okay, I kind of want to tell him, but I should be in the gym working out. So I was antsy, and I even experienced that to a certain degree with the athletes that I work with today when we're first starting to learn the skills. So I can see coaches still saying, "Why are we doing this?" Right? But when I very first started listening to them, it was Dr. Ken Ravizza, and then the head coach at Cal State Fullerton, Lynn Rogers. Uh, Ken would work with me for 1 hour, and then Lynn would join us for the second hour. And I worked with them 2 hours a day, twice a week for almost 3 months. And I accumulated almost 40 hours of work. And when I very first started listening to them say, "Slow down," okay, because I would freeze up. We'd be in the gym, and I'd be trying to do a very simple gymnastic skill, like going backwards for a back walk over, a very slow kind of bendy trick where you put your hands down behind you. And I would freeze up and he'd say, slow down. It's okay. Take your time. I've got you. Take a breath. Can you imagine it? And he taught me how to visualize it in slow motion. Okay, here I am standing. Here I am looking up at the ceiling. Now I'm reaching back. Okay, I can see the floor. And we would do it like baby steps. And that was a light bulb. That was the moment where I said, oh, I can see it. I can feel it. And you start to feel more in control instead of out of control. And then you start to feel safe, that I'm not going to get hurt. And so that was specifically because I was afraid. And then there were other moments of just being able to calm myself down when I felt myself, like, the triggers of being afraid and your nervous system starting to get shaky, everything feels awful. Just being able to sit with it and not let it control me. That was another light bulb moment. Like, okay, this is not easy, but I can do this. I can get through this.
I resonate with you in a couple things in that. One is, as athletes and coaches are resistant to mental training, I think typically, for me as a coach, when I was coaching basketball and teams, I try to do the mental stuff with my players, but they, like you said, they're like, oh, why do I need, the players are like, why do I need this? And typically a player would only be open to it when they had hit rock bottom as an athlete, like you were at rock bottom, or they were that high performer looking for that edge. And so for me, I'm like, well, I do this with my team. Like, like only, like I'd wait till a guy came to me for rock bottom and then I might, prescribe them a few, okay, let's do some, what went well journal logs and a few things like that. I mean, obviously I had very limited, I'm not skilled like you, but I can also resonate as a leadership coach in this space, because the coaches that come to me for, leadership coaching and culture work have typically hit rock bottom, or they're really high performers. And then there's like this 90% of people in the middle that don't reach out, So my question in all this is, what are ways to reach those people in the middle, the ones that are maybe not just constantly looking for anything that's going to give them an edge in their sport, and the ones that haven't hit rock bottom? How do coaches approach athletes amongst the whole team of 15 basketball players, 12 volleyball players, 40 lacrosse players, or 80 American football players, or whatever sport it is? Like, how do you try to get everyone interested and engaged in this mental training? Because like you said, it doesn't feel like work. It does feel like work because it's really hard, but it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm in the gym and I'm lifting. Like, you lift weights, you feel stronger instantly, right? Like, you do feel that strength. You go do a visualization or whatever, stuff that you have people do, like it could just feel really boring at times.
Yeah. Excellent question. For a moment I was thinking, yeah, what would I do? But all of a sudden it flew into my mind. So I don't think that that it's a loss unless somebody is completely the extreme where they're just only about the physical. There's certain coaches and coaching styles where they're only about the physical and they're just not ready yet in their own journey, right? But the people that have the coaches and the programs who have genuine interest in having a richer experience for their programs, and I mean this in a way where they want the business of parents and families signing up with them. They want to see their programs succeed. They're looking for tools at times. It may not be because they're on the high performance, winning, driven, for success. And it may not be because that, like you said, that they're at that desperate place and they hit rock bottom, but they're looking for an overall richer experience. And that's when, to me, it's a one-on-one conversation with, whether it's the head coach or the owner of a gymnastics club. And to me, it's people skills, it's relationships. I'm not here to sell my service to you. I'm here to listen to you, to see, what are your staff members going through, and what can I do to support them. And all of a sudden I'll start hearing stories about, one of my coaches, he just doesn't have the patience, and he hasn't really learned how to work with the kids in a way that's going to build their confidence, or he doesn't know what to do when they start to struggle. And so it's those little kind of almost private personal stories of the coaches when they're not at their best, when they feel at a loss, and how I can help to create that connection, or help them create the connection with their athletes. And I know, JP, you're all about this. And because it is relationship first, and then it's, okay, how can I help you? And I talk to coaches about that this is a job of service. It's service leadership, or servant leadership, sorry. And that really resonates with a lot of coaches who are not the most driven, right? And not rock bottom, but they really want to help create a richer culture within their program, within their families.
So I'm thinking about this. You're working and you're talking about having conversations with coaches there, but you've also done a lot of work with individual athletes, and part of what I think we run into is, JP and I, obviously we see the value in this. I see the value in this with my own team. And yet even I feel a little bit tentative as a coach of trying to present this to an individual athlete, or present this, to our families. Hey, we're going to invest some time into this. And so I'm just curious if the resistance is the same from coaches. Coaches push back for X, Y, and Z. Do athletes sometimes push back for the same reasons, or is there a difference in the perception of maybe the value of the mental skills from an individual athlete to a coach that's maybe trying to implement something with their team?
So for athletes, I feel like they need something very tangible that's going to help them right now, that's going to shift a thought in their mind right now. If if everything's going great, right, and they haven't already had the nurturing or the introduction to any kind of a mental skill, and they don't seem to have a curious personality, then they're not likely going to get engaged on that day, right? But if they just want to feel like, I do group clinics for teams, for young athletes. I've worked with college teams, and the two of the most common things that they want is they want to feel more in control, and they want to feel more confident. And so that resonates with them. They want to, because parents and coaches rule the world, right? Children, teenagers, they don't often feel that they have a voice. And so what I teach them, as I say, and this is at the beginning of my book, Focused and on Fire, is I say, whose voice is the most important voice in the whole world for the rest of your life? And sometimes I'll say, my mom. And I'll say, yeah. And I teach them, I say, it's your voice. Your voice is the most important voice, for the rest of your life, right? And you have all the power. And I think that kids love that. They love to feel that they have power. And so that's one of the things that I emphasize. As a matter of fact, I just got some new T-shirts made up, and it says, "I have all the power." And it comes from a place of being in tune with yourself. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? Am I breathing? And that's where it starts. And so sometimes I can kind of engage the kids right there. Sometimes it's out of a place of fear. They're afraid to disappoint their coach. They're afraid that their parent is going to, ask them questions again after practice, and they're getting annoyed. They're starting to get tired of hearing, having to report. They're afraid of failure. So that's another way to engage them. But if you find, it's sort of like, what's their currency? What's important to them? Do they want to feel powerful? Do they want to avoid the conflict? The interaction with a coach or a parent. So that's where I can find a way to connect with them, and just start with one or two mental skills. It doesn't have to be like, the whole practice and we're going to work together for 3 months. It's not, it's just what would help you today? What's important to you today?
Yeah, what I'm really hearing is whether you're working with an individual or a team, you're really focused on the needs of the athletes. So you're trying to connect to them through their
Yeah.
needs and their wants, and that confidence and control. That really resonates with me because I think so oftentimes, one of the big things I encourage coaches on through our personal development plans or player development plans, or, is when you're sitting down, you're having one-on-ones with your athletes is, coaches are like, well, where should I start? You should start where the athlete wants to start. What do they want to talk about? What is important to them? What are their goals? What are their aspirations? And from there, then you can offer that support, and you can come in with the right amount of the right tools, the right, you can kind of mentor and guide after that part.
Mm-hmm.
I want to touch on something there I think is really important in just even your intro there is just you're not just mental training. You're not just training the mental game. I've got, if I look behind me on my books, I've got all these books on the mental game, of sports. And then there's a whole other section of books on mental health, right? I've got all these things that I read on. There's not a lot of people that are doing both, and I think that's really phenomenal that you're doing both, because I think that they are not exclusive. They support each other, would be my belief. But tell us a little bit about, how you see the mental training and the mental health components and coaching both of those things within individuals, how they're so important and interconnected.
Yeah, they're very interwoven. Thank you so much for asking that, JP. You know, I I always had a strong sense that and this is from the time I was a teenager, that when I felt less stressed, when I felt more connected to my desires, when I felt like I could think clearly and have a strategy or a plan, right? That I was in a better place. I felt better about myself. I felt more energetic, right? I felt more creative. Uh, I was happier. And so when I attended, I actually did a training in mental health first aid. And if you haven't heard of it, whoever's listening, I would highly recommend doing this program. I want to say I did it 3 years ago, and so it's probably time for me to renew. And this was specific to coaches, although they do have programs for parents as well. And they have, I think, programs for people in the workplace and whatnot. But in the coaching aspect, this is to help coaches identify what are early signs of mental health issues with athletes. And the education was just, honestly, it was profound. And I thought it was so spot on for coaches to be able to develop themselves in that area. So prior to the 3 years ago, um, I know that athletes get depressed. When I was coaching at Stanford University in the 90s, it was very important to me as a gymnastics coach to understand what they were doing, or to, at the very least, nurture their ability to take care of themselves and to feel in control of their lives, to feel like they had a voice, to feel that they could reduce their stress. And so I did teach them mental skills. I have always integrated that into my gymnastics coaching. But in the last few years, I've expanded to emphasize the mental health through compassion practice, through empathy practice and through the breathing, relaxing, and meditation practice. And whether it's you as the athlete or you as the coach, these practices are not typical. They're not common in coach development programs. They're not common during practice. Okay, we're going to line up everybody and we're going to do some breathing and meditation. Yeah, we don't usually do that in sports. And through my practice as a mental training coach over the last 10 plus years, it's just been like magic. When I help these kids learn, when I help the parents learn, because I'll have a mother-daughter or a father-daughter pair. I primarily work with female gymnasts, but I worked with many athletes. But when I pair them up and I have them repeat certain words to each other, this is absolutely magical. They all of a sudden, they become more in tune with themselves. They feel like they can hear the stress just kind of like falling off of them because they're being very real. Like, I'm nervous to go to the gym today. And the mom repeats, "You're nervous to go to the gym today." All of a sudden, just in that, the child feels seen and heard instead of, "Well, what are you nervous for? You're going to be fine." That's dismissive. That dismisses that they actually need to acknowledge this emotion that they're having right now. And so, Mom, I want you, what I need is to just feel loved. Okay. I hear that you just need to feel loved. I don't want to feel coached by you. Some kids, they'll say, my mom like wants to coach me. Right. And I'll say to the mom, shh, shh, shh. And I'll joke around. I go, do you want to put a piece of tape on her mouth? And she'll say, yeah. And so we'll be playful about it. But it's really so mentally healthy for these kids and the parents and the coaches to be able to acknowledge, it's like you've talked about, JP, it's the emotional intelligence factor. And all of that leads into people being able to manage their emotions, right? And to me, that's what mental health is it's not that you're happy all the time. It's that you really learn to manage your emotions and your decisions, that you feel that you have the ability to think clearly. You feel that you have the ability to make a good decision, right?
Yeah, and I just want to share one thought on that and have a quick question for you. Just what you're sharing resonates because I think I've come to the place where I'd love to do mental performance training with my athletes, and that stuff's valuable. But like you said, if they're coming in there and they're experiencing such high levels of anxiety, their window of tolerance is so small, then they become triggered so easily. Then, you know, what's the point? Like at the end of the day, I can do a visualization of the free throw and I set the free throw, and all day I think I have so much on the line to make that free throw, and everyone's counting on me, and the pressure to I gotta prove everybody, and I'm not gonna feel loved if I miss it. Like, well, I could have visualized 1,000 times, but it's not gonna, it's not gonna keep me from that. It's not gonna help me make that free throw right in that moment. So I think what you're sharing is really, really powerful. I am encouraged that more coaches are introducing things like meditation. We actually just had a guest on talking about at Stanford. Their water polo coach does meditations with them on the sidelines.
Awesome.
That compassion and empathy practice, I'm curious more, what might that look like for Nate and his team or some other coach out there today? How might they do that? Because I think we all know what mindfulness and meditation is. But yeah,
Right.
what would be a compassion or empathy practice be that would be practical for a coach today?
Right. So thank you. I love that you were curious about that because we do hear about, you know, like you said, like a coach at Stanford and water polo is now doing some meditation. I think we're in the baby stages or in the early stages of coaches' awareness and then also learning and then also applying. So that is definitely, starting to roll out here and there. Self-compassion. I took a course in the spring called Mindful Self-Compassion. And if you're not familiar with Kristen Neff, she's a doctor, and she is seen as the Western pioneer of self-compassion. But what mindful self-compassion is, and what I would consider self-compassion practice in sports, is you take little short exercises and you implement them with your team. And you can start out like saying, okay, so athletes are very physical. They're very in tune with their body's movement, right? Most of the time. They're not as in tune with their thoughts and their emotions. But when you put your hands here on your chest, this is a universal position and sign of either wanting to feel safe, right? Or saying, I am safe, right? And so what we want to do is teach athletes and coaches that it just takes a moment of being a friend to yourself. That's what self-compassion is. It's being a friend to yourself. So if you're saying, I'm afraid, I don't know what to do, I'm scared, my coach is going to get mad, I don't want to fail, I don't want to disappoint my team. Putting your hands right here on your chest, one on top of the other, for those who are listening, and taking a breath and closing your eyes, and you just rock side to side or back and forth. And you take deep breaths, and you can even kind of pat your top hand, almost like a heartbeat, like this. And you can simply just say, I'm okay. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay. You can say, I love myself. I'm a friend to myself. And I have woven this into actually some new equipment that, we will probably talk about in a little bit, but I want to feel calm, in control, and safe, and I am a friend to myself. I care for myself. And it's really simple. That's just one little exercise. And there's a bunch, there's many. And when we teach athletes to do this, then they can actually have that tool in their little mental toolbox to be able to take 10 seconds or 30 seconds to do that for themselves organically, right? There's all kinds of tools. And I think that when we teach them that they can practice self-compassion, which scientifically, actually, this is the mind blower right here, is it's been studied in research that when you practice self-compassion, you will become more resilient. So if they missed a free throw shot and they say a few words to themselves that are in that tone of, it's okay, you're doing great, you can make this one, you're a friend to yourself, right? That self-compassion will help them to be more resilient and make the next shot. So to me, that was the game changer. It wasn't just, like I want to feel better. It's I want to perform better. I want to bounce back. So to me, it's just fantastic.
And I would say some of those phrases there wouldn't really resonate with me as like but what I do understand and what I think you're as far as like I'm a friend to myself. I think what we're trying to do is trying to get athletes to maybe examine the current way they're thinking, their current thought habits, the self-talk, and then replace those with more beneficial ways of thinking, right?
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
so I imagine if I was to take this back to a team, I might even take time with the athletes to say, okay, when you're in these pressure situation, what is your thinking? And getting them to be aware of that, and then say, okay, what thoughts might be more beneficial? What thoughts would better serve you in those moments? And then maybe have them come up with those, and then have them to train that. I think that's really really powerful.
Yeah, well, to me, I write about that and teach that with my clients all the time, is kind of noticing what are my negative thoughts right now, what's stopping me right now, and writing that down, getting it out, and then what can I replace that with? That's definitely a mental skill, or it's a mental exercise that I do. The self-compassion, whether you're a nurse, whether you're, a techie person and you're working 80 hours a week, whether you're an athlete, you're going to feel tired. You're going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel these different emotions. And you often start criticizing yourself. And that's going to actually keep you stuck. So when you you don't have to say the words that I said, I'm a friend to myself, I love myself. It can be, I work hard, I'm a good person. It can be those types of things, but it's in the tone of, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. And you talk to yourself like you're like, if your mom or your dad or a good friend was saying, "Hey, you work so hard. You're so dedicated. I admire you." It's those types of things that we want to say to ourselves that we don't usually do that at all. In a way that there's that feeling of compassion for yourself.
You find that when you do some of this training about self-compassion, that having that self-awareness and working collectively sort of as a team also makes teammates more empathetic towards each other in those moments or when they're facing, a pressure situation or failure. And are there steps there? Do you have things that you encourage them to do for each other as teammates, knowing that there are those hard moments in performance that they can in some way enhance each other?
Yeah, in fact, I'll ask if I have a client that I'm working with. I'm trying to think of one right now because I know I did this recently. I said, okay, so who's one girl on the team, one or two girls on the team that are your friends that you could ask for help, or that you could, get a high five from, or you could tell them, I need you to watch me. And so they'll name them. And I say, when you share what your thoughts, when you share your struggle, I said, that's an opportunity for them to help you. And I think that that's so true. What we want to do in families, in our teams, in our community, is that when we say, gosh, I'm really struggling right now, that is an opportunity for somebody else to feel really good that, hey, I can help you. I want to watch you. I want to see you be successful. I want to be part of your journey. And so that's definitely um, not just a feel good, but I have purpose, right? As your teammate, I have purpose to be here for you today. As a teammate, I get to cheer for you and celebrate you. And that brings a deeper connection, right? And yes, I absolutely teach them ways that they can talk to each other and share so that they can be stronger together and lift their team up.
Yeah, and I think one of the things underlying all of that in terms of just sort of teaching that being a good teammate in those moments is that we're trying to get our players to be able to communicate that you still belong. Lisa, you're going to the free throw line, but your belonging and your value to us is not on the line right here, right in this performance. And obviously that's thousands of signals that build up to that. We won a state championship one year and we shot 70% in the regular season. And for a long time, and like trying to figure this out, like, how is this possible? And part of it is our better free throw shooters got to the line more. I'll give you that. But talking to the girls afterwards, it was that was the theme that came up over and over is I knew that my teammates had my back. That would be their phrasing of the same idea that I belong no matter what happens in this moment at the line.
Yes, absolutely. When you feel that synergy of everybody's collective energy, and that it's okay. We're all human. We all make mistakes. And this is part of the self-compassion thing, is like common experiences, common suffering, common pain, is that we understand that my teammate has made mistakes before, and yet here they are saying, it's okay, it's all right, we believe in you, you can do it. So we all struggle, at different times. And when we have that expression of, I have your back, or I'm here for you, right? No matter what. And it's okay if you made the mistake, Let it go. It's okay. We've all made mistakes. And so you can say to yourself, okay, everybody's made this mistake before. I'm not alone, right? And that absolutely helps them to feel, like a closer knit family, that they trust each other, they're there for each other. And exactly what you said, Nate. I love that about the free throw shots.
Okay, so we're going to take a break in our conversation with Lisa. In our next episode, we'll be discussing with her the role of coaches and parents in the mental health of athletes. In the meantime, you can find her at lisamitzel.com, zentigermind.com, on Instagram at Mitzel_coach, and on Twitter at ZenTiger. Thank you for listening to the Coaching Culture Podcast. Please take 60 seconds to leave us a review, subscribe to this podcast, and share this episode with a friend if you found it valuable. This episode is brought to you by my latest book, The Culture System, A Proven Process for Creating an Extraordinary Team Culture. It's been endorsed by many exceptional leaders and coaches, one of those being 2022 NBA Coach of the Year, Monty Williams, who called it a special book with inspiring stories, applicable strategies, and a proven model for developing team culture. This book is more than just a collection of practical tools for leaders. It teaches a proven framework that some of the world's best organizations and teams use. It's packed with real-life examples and case studies that show you how these ideas can be implemented in any context. Whether you're a coach, manager, or leader, you'll find invaluable insights to help you build the culture you want. Don't miss out on this opportunity to transform your team. Visit myculturesystem.com to learn more about the book, or you can get your copy on Amazon or Audible today.